Hi, my name is Aniruddha Sudhar. Today is my first demo on Spring and Spring Boot. In this demo, we will discuss about the Spring and Spring Boot frameworks and develop a first Spring Boot application using Spring Initializer. So let's start with the demo. So today our topic is we will cover Spring and Spring Boot. So Spring and Spring Boot are both the frameworks in Java. So what do you mean by framework? Frameworks is nothing. Frameworks is nothing but the predefined classes and libraries which will help in easy development of the application. So let's start with what is Spring. So Spring is an open source lightweight framework that allow Java developer to build simple, reliable and scalable enterprise applications. This framework is mainly focuses on providing various ways to help your business objects. So and the most important feature of Spring is dependency injection. It helps to create loosely coupled applications. Spring is used to create various applications. It helps to run the Spring application. To run the Spring application, we need to set the server explicitly. Like we have to add or use the external server like Tomcat or XAMPP, etc. To run Spring application, deployment descriptor is required. Means to deploy the Spring application, we need to add the so many description, and that is a little bit hard. And to create yeah and to create the Spring application, the developers need to write lots of code, and this is not a good practice. It doesn't provide support for the in-memory database. Developers needs to write boilerplate code for a smaller task, which is not a good thing. Developers have to define dependencies manually in the pom.xml. These are some drawbacks of Spring framework, and because of these drawbacks of Spring framework, the Spring Boot framework is used mostly. There are some feature, features of Spring Boot which are very beneficial for the developers. Like all the drawbacks of Spring framework are covered in the Spring Boot framework. So now we will discuss about the Spring Boot framework. So let's get started. Spring Boot is built on the top of conventional Spring framework, like widely used to develop REST APIs. It provides all the features of Spring and easier to use than Spring. So Spring Boot is a microservice based framework and a production ready application, and makes production ready application in very less time. In Spring Boot, everything is auto configured. Yeah, we just need to use proper configuration for utilizing a particular functionality. Spring Boot is very useful if we want to develop a REST API. The most important feature of Spring Boot is auto configuration, as we discussed. Spring Boot helps to create the standalone applications. Also, Spring Boot provides the embedded servers such as Tomcat and Jyoti. It means there is no need to add the external servers like Spring, and there is no need of description to develop deploy, which makes the deployment easier to developers, and this is a good thing for us. It reduces the lines of code. It means we don't need to write lots of code like a boilerplate code. It provides support for the in-memory database. In Spring Boot there is a reduction in boilerplate code, yeah, as we discussed. Pom.xml file internally handles the required dependencies, so there is no need in Spring Boot to add the dependencies manually. For dependencies we use the Spring Initializer. So the most important question is why Spring Boot is used over Spring. So let's know about this question. If Spring was solving all the problems, sorry, sorry, the reason why we need Spring Boot is we are changing or shifting towards application like microservices, and with microservices, one of the most important thing is we would want to be able to develop applications very quickly, and Spring Boot gives so many advantages to developers, so that is why Spring Boot is used more than the Spring framework. So this is all about the Spring and Spring Boot. Now, as we discuss the Spring Boot and Spring, both are the frameworks. It means it gives the like pre-built classes or libraries and dependencies which are used in the application development. Now let's walk uh, know how to create the Spring Boot application using Spring Initializer. So for creating the Spring Boot application, let's go to the browser. Here we just need to type Spring Initializer. Initial here. The first link, just open the first link. So this is the Spring Initializer. Using this we will create our first Spring Boot application. So here you can see that uh, the project is Maven. Here Maven is the project building tool. Language is Java because we are using a Java language, and this is the version of Spring Boot. Here you can choose any version, and this is 3.2.11 is the latest version of Spring Boot. Here you can see the project metadata, means the information about the project, which is sh- uh, very important. Here you will see, you can see the group, like group id. This represents the unit based package name of the project. Typically it follows reverse domain name convention, like com.example. For if your domain is like, it means if your domain is example.com, the group id would be com.example. So, and this is the artifact id. This represents the name of your project. Like it is a unique identifier for the artifact. Like um, here you can write any name. Like I'm just writing the Spring Boot first application, first app. This is the artifact id. Now this is the here you can see the description. Here you can add the description of your project, like I'm just writing, this is my first this is my first Spring Boot application. Yeah, you can write a long description as you want. Now we here you can see add dependencies. uh, Now we have to add the Spring Web dependency. Like, yeah, here you can see the Spring Web dependency, which is and the description about it, like build web including RESTful application using Spring MVC, uses Apache Tomcat as the default embedded container. So this Spring Web dependency is needed for our needed to run our Spring Boot application, because it contains the embedded Tomcat server, and it also includes the RESTful APIs. Here also you can see the explore button. Just click on it, explore. Here you will see all the files which are we are created. Like here the group id Spring Framework Boot, artifact id Spring Boot starter parent. Here is the version of Spring, and this is the group id we see before, like com.example, and the name of our Spring Boot application, Spring Boot first app. This is the name of our Spring Boot application, and this is the description. Here you can see this is my first Spring Boot application, and the dependency we have added Here is the Spring Boot starter web dependency which we have added. Now close this window, and here you can see the generate button. Just click on it and it will generate our Spring Boot application as a zip file. Now go to the file manager, and here in downloads, here you can see our Spring Boot first app zip. Just extract it. This is our extracted folder. Now open the Eclipse. This is our Eclipse window. Mm, Now to create our the Spring Boot application, we have to just import that folder which we have created now, mm, with the name Spring Boot first application. Click on import. Here you can see the existing Maven project, because this is our this project this Maven project is already exist in our machine. So just select existing Maven project, then next. Here you browse the project. Like, this is our Spring Boot first app is our project. Select the folder and just click on finish. So you can see here is our first Spring Boot project which we are just imported. Now let's explore this project structure. Here is the here is the src main Java. Here you can see the one package like com.example.first Spring Boot app, and this is the class Spring Boot first application. Just open it. So here you will see the @Spring Boot application. This annotation is the entry point of our Spring Boot application, and this Spring Boot application is made from the three different annotation. Like, here you can see the Spring @configuration, @enable auto configuration, @components, and these are the three annotations which makes Spring Boot application. And just clicking on the this, you can see the information about these annotations. Like, just hover on it and you will see the annotations. Here, this is the @Spring Boot configuration annotation, which marks the class as a source of bin. And the second one is enable auto configuration. It enables the Spring Boot auto configuration mechanism. And third one is the component scan, which allows Spring to automatically scan and register bins within the package. The and now the next is src main resource. Here you will see the application.properties. We don't need that. So this is application.properties. Here you can configure your MySQL, like password and all. Uh, Simply here you will set the port name, oh sorry, port number, and like a database URL. As we move on, we have to use the database in the Spring Boot application. So for that, to connect the database with Spring Boot application, we just need to set the URL in the Spring application.properties file. And the last is the, here you can see pom.xml file. This file is the Maven configuration file where all the dependencies of our project are listed, like Spring Web. There are so many dependencies which we use later, like Spring Data JPA, which is used for the database connectivity. Then Spring Boot Dev Tools, then Lombok. So many dependencies are there in Spring, which we use later. Now, so let's start to write the our first Spring Boot application. This is our first Spring Boot application. Now we are going to like write the REST controllers. Oh, sorry, like REST API for in this using Spring Boot. So let's get started. So here inside SRC main Java file, just create a new package. To create a new package, just right click here, then click on new. Here you will see the package, click on package and name dot controller. Here we, sorry, my bad, controller, uh, and click on finish. So this is our package. So you can see here these are two packages and the difference between these two packages, like this one is the colorful and this one is the only white. So I'll explain why this is colorful and why this is white. So here this package is empty. It means the we have not added the any class in the this package. And this first this package is colorful because here Spring Boot first application.java class is present. It means when there is no class present in the package, the package color is white. So uh, let's see if we add the class, then it will change its color or not. So to add the class, just right click on the package, new, then click on class. Here you can write your class name which you want. I just write first controller. controller.java. The name of the class is always start with the capital letter. Let's click on finish. So here our first controller class is created, and you can see our package color is changed from white to brown. Yeah. So this is our first controller. Okay, so here in this class I'm just adding the one annotation, REST controller. REST controller. Just import the REST controller. Okay, this REST controller annotations tells the Spring Boot that this is the class. This class is the controller that we will handle HTTP request. It means we write here different HTTP requests. Like there are four types of request HTTP requests, like get, map, get, put, delete, and post. Just write the Now we will write our request mapping. Here in this class, just we will try that we add two numbers, like if number 1 and number 2. So to add the two numbers, just write the mapping, get mapping. Here we have to add the get mapping annotation, and in this, here I will add the and I will add the endpoint as add here with the slash. In this bracket represents the endpoints of our URL. Just import. We don't need to import that. Like now right here the logic, like public int add at the rate request param. Oh, this request param is another annotations which we use for the, like, to get the parameters. Int number 1 is our first parameter, and second one is at the rate request param. Int number 2. and return these two numbers, number 1 plus number 2. Okay, import this get mapping. Now import request param. Yeah, so this is our logic for the addition of two numbers using Spring Boot application. So let's see whether our application is runs or not. So to run our the application, you just need to go to the Spring Boot first application.java file where our @Spring Boot application annotation is present, because this is the entry point of our Spring Boot application. So to run this Spring Boot application, just right click, run as Java application. Okay, here you will see our application is going to run. Okay, here you can see our application is failed to start. Why it is failed to start? Because web server, here is the reason of failure, like web server failed to start because port 8080 was already in use. Because Spring Boot uses by default port is 8080, and I think I have used, means, in background this port is in use. So to work on this, mm, just go to our application.properties, and here add server dot port is equal to any port number as you want, 80803 or 4, etc. Just save. Now go to this Spring Boot first application, run as Java application. Let's see if our application runs or not. Yeah, here you can say Tomcat started on port 8084. So our application is started Spring Boot application. Here you can see. So this is our first. Now let's check this application using browser. So how to check, like open the browser, here add localhost, the port number which we have given 8084, then slash, then add, which is our endpoint. Sorry, this is it's showing error, my bad. So to start or run the application using browser or test the API. Here we test the API which we created. So to test the API, write HTTP colon double slash localhost localhost, then our port number. So our port number is 8084. Then the endpoint, here we add the endpoint as a add. Here you can see our endpoint. Right add, sorry, slash add, and here we use here the request param. So just write here question mark, and we use two numbers like number 1, and we have to declare this number or give values to this number to test our API is working or not, like is equal to. I'm just giving number 1 as 5 and number 2 is equal to 9. And just enter. So here you will see our output 14. 9 plus 5 is equal to 14. This is the first or one way of test your APIs or REST APIs. There is another way of testing your REST APIs. You can use Postman also to test this API. Just so here using, we will see how to test our APIs using Postman. Just open the Postman. Now Postman is going to open in a few minutes. Just wait a second. Basically Postman is the API testing tool which is used to test our APIs whether it's properly working or not.